Yes, good morning and welcome to today's program. The name of the program is Cutting Edge, and it's a program that actually brings out the best out of our people, those who have achieved, who have gone through the ups and downs of this life, and then I've got lots and lots of achievements to show for it, and thereby serving as inspiration for our coming generation and even for youths of today so that they can be inspired as to how to be resilient in their pursuits, how to be accommodating, and how to be very much impacting within the society in which they find themselves. Not wasting your time today, I'm going to Nigeria to bring you one of the most icons on the journalism world in Nigeria. Is a colleague who has actually dotted the lines in so many ways when talking journalistically about how journalism has improved in Nigeria, impacting on the people, impacting on the nation. And I'm talking about bringing you today Mr. Adewale Adeoye. He's an educationist and a graduate of University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and has worked in different media organizations in Nigeria and at least rising from bottom to top and winning so many laurels. Actually, is the first African to win the Journalist of the Year, which actually was given by CNN. And prior to those achievements, he's been working relentlessly to make sure that journalism in Nigeria is well in place and worked with the Punch newspaper, worked as well with the Guardian, and has got so much to tell you today. Please, Mr. Adil, I would like you to actually tell us more about your achievements on the field of journalism and how far you have gone in being what you are today on the field of journalism. Because as you know, when we are talking about journalism, we have lots and lots of stories to tell in Nigeria as we go through a lot as reporters, as journalists, as writers. So please tell us more about how you have arrived at this point, whereby we can point to you that you are a pride to the entire nation.
Well, I think if we look at where we are today as a country, one will be saying the truth if we say that we have not achieved much, even as media practitioners. If you look at the legacies left behind by our forebears in the media profession, if you look at the fact that the struggle for independence in Nigeria was virtually waged by journalists. Look at Zik, he was a journalist. Nnamdi Azikiwe. Chief Obafemi Awolowo, he was a journalist. He established Tribune newspaper in 1948. And Nahoro, who moved the motion for independence, he was a journalist. Ernest Ikoli, an Ijaw man, who fought vigorously for the president of Nigeria, was a journalist. In fact, in 1859, when the first newspaper was published, Ìwé Ìròyìn Yorùbá àti Àwọn Ẹ̀gbá by Henry Townsend, the idea was to have a better society. So if you look at the role media people have played in the Nigerian Renaissance, I think we can say that somebody like Adewale Adeoye have achieved not much, because if you look at the political economy, if you look at the contradictions facing Nigeria, and the fact that we media organizations and journalists, we have not been able to dissolve these contradictions. I can say that all what we have achieved can be likened to a footnote in the annals of Nigerian history. But that is not to say that we have not achieved anything at all. In the campaign against military rule, for instance, we lost a lot of people like Dele Giwa in 1986. At the time, our Concord newspaper was closed down. The Punch newspaper was closed down. The Guardian was closed down. Some journalists disappeared. I remember a colleague in the Guardian in those days, Chinedu Ofaru. He disappeared up to today, cannot be found. We don't know whether he was killed or whether he was kidnapped. And then if you look at people who have passed through, personally, I was detained by the Directorate of Military Intelligence. At the time, I
Hmm.
was in exile in Cote d'Ivoire. At the time, my house was raided. And there are so many other people people like Tunde Oladipo, who was shot dead in Abeokuta, and many other people like that. They are just too numerous to be remembered. Then you see that we have tried our best, but our best is just not enough. So I
Hmm.
think Nigerians still expect much from media practitioners. So I think today it's not yet time for people to be talking about trophies. I've won the Nigerian Media Merit Award 4 times, the Diamond Award for Media Excellence as the best reporter in 1 year, some years back, and also Steve Biko Award and all that. But I think all those things come to nothing when our people continue to live in misery, in poverty, in abject poverty, when violence continue to reign on our land, and when our people still feed on less than $100 per day, and people cannot go to farms because of fears of violence. And
Hmm.
everywhere you go, you see anguish, poverty, blood written on the faces of our people. So I think it's not yet time for us. It's not yet time for Uhuru. So media practitioners, we still have a long way to go as far as Nigeria remains in a state of stupor. So I hope there will be that day that will come in the future that we cannot rise up in pride and hold on to that trophy. And that is the time where there is liberty, there is freedom, there is respect of human rights, respect for the dignity of man. So for now, I think we are not confident to say that we have actually achieved much as media practitioners, in spite of the tribulations and agony that we have passed through over the past years.
Yeah, thank you very much. Excellently answered, actually. Now, let me take you to this. When you are coming into journalism in Nigeria, is this the sort of station that you are expecting? Because before you can say you want to be a journalism practitioner, you must have been envisioning certain future for the nation. You must have been envisioning certain stages that you want, your society to be, or certain standards of living that you want them to build. Now, when you look back now and thinking about what has been happening in recent years, is this the Nigeria that you projected when you came into journalism?
Well, I think people go into journalism for so many reasons. But for me, as a student of radical politics at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, with people like Chima Obani, Lani Arogunade, and all of us, we went into
Yeah.
journalism to provide a voice for the unheard voices. We wanted to re-echo the valley, the voices from the valley. We wanted to use journalism to change the society. We wanted to create a bridge between the poor, the malnourished, and the oppressors. So that was the dream I had when I went to journalism under one of the most brutal regimes in human history. That was in 1989 when Babangida was the president, the military president of the country. And I started as a reporter. Journalism may not agree with me, but for some of us, journalism should set an agenda for a better society. Journalism should set agenda for political and economic renaissance. And if you look at our history, like I said, since 1859, those who started journalism it has always been about how to make the society better. Apart from the first newspaper in 1989, we had the Lagos Times, which was established in 1880. Then we had the Lagos Observer, 1882. And in fact, at a time, there was the Lagos Mercury chronology, produced by one Adewale, who used to produce journalism through handwriting. He will write his news story and begin to sell from one place to the other. But one thing was common about all this. So I think that should be the hallmark of journalism. And that's why we call it the fourth estate of the realm, to create an alternative voice so that people can speak out about their travels, about their tribulations, about the difficulties that they pass through. So for me, that's my dream of being a journalist, to make our society better so that all of us can be proud that we have a society that respects human rights and the dignity of man.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Adeoye. Now, considering all these factors that you mentioned, Now, can we proudly say that actually half of those visions that we had has been met or have been achieved? Can you look back now and say that you are very proud to be a Nigerian as a country?
So, voice, follow.
Or the voice, okay. I'm trying to just ask, explaining all this to us now, the vision you had, the intention that you had then, trying to create an egalitarian society, trying to build the mind of the people, trying to actually create a future for the as a voice for the voiceless. And now, when you look back now, can you tell me that half of those things that were envisioned then has been achieved today, both by you and many other actors in journalism like you? Can you be proud of today's Nigeria?
Well, I I think um, we we cannot deny the fact that Nigeria has made some progress since 1914, that the country was put together by a decree of the colonial masters. There have been a lot of improvement in terms of railways, in terms of communication, in terms of education, in terms of human resources development. But when you look at this in the context of the potentials of the country, the mineral resources at the disposal of the country, and also when you compare Nigeria with our peer groups like Malaysia, like Ghana, like Singapore, like South Africa, like Brazil, if you take this kind of comparison, and then if you compare what Nigeria achieved in the 1950s, in the 1960s, when the University College of Ibadan, for instance, used to be the 5th best college of medicine in the whole of Commonwealth. When the University of Ife, in the 70s, was one of the best in the world. When our colleges, King's College, Ikitiparako College, Christ School, Ibadan Grammar School, could compare favorably with colleges in Europe and America. And then suddenly, Nigeria now has to, find ourselves in a situation where our people are dying in the Atlantic just because they want to go to Libya. Our people are struggling to go to Ghana to go for education. In those days, you will see signpost, tailor trained in London. Today, you are saying, come to this tailor, he's trained in Ghana. Come and hire a mechanic, he's a Togolese. This Tyler is a Togolese. So it means we are looking at the kind of the quality, in terms of comparison with some of these other people coming from neighboring countries that used to be more or less like footnotes to the grandeur association with Nigeria in those days. Even Nigerian lecturers, university graduates, when they go abroad, they go to other countries, they have to recite exams. Whereas in the 70s, before they can lecture in those countries, whereas in the 70s, before you graduate from UI, from UNN, people will be looking for you from Trinidad and Tobago as medical doctors, from America, from Latin America, to come and work in those areas. Now, our certificates are no longer competitive in the international market. Our human resource base has declined. Our educational qualities has gone down the drain. Our moral values are nothing to write home about. So, Nigeria of our dream, in a comparative sense, Nigeria has become a cemetery of great dreams. When you have any great idea, you don't come and execute it in Nigeria. And that is why our lecturers, our university graduates, they prefer to go and work in Ghana. They prefer to go and work in even Uganda. They prefer to go and work in Rwanda. They prefer to go and work in Southern Sudan. They prefer to go and be prostitutes in Lebanon instead of working in their own country. So that, if you remember our history, some 300 years ago, when Yoruba people were being taken for slavery, they got abroad, they ran back home because the political economy at home was far better than going to work in sugarcane plantations in the US. But today, 300 years after, if you bring a plane to Murtala Mohammed Airport and ask you to go and work as dishwashers, as people that work in plantations in the US, Professors will rush, doctors will rush, journalists will rush. They want to go to America. So 300 years ago, our economy was more vibrant. Our values were more, were more standardized compared with what we have today. So Nigeria is going down the drain, falling off the cliff edge in almost every aspect. Almost every aspect. If you talk about education, if you talk about human resources, if you talk about moral values, you can imagine a situation where our people, water that is taken from the street, they package it, we call it poor water. That is perversion of our mental values. You know that this water, instead of pure water, you are calling rotten water pure water. When they take light, our children shout up NEPA. So you can see that our values, our orientation, is a big problem. And in those days, if you are driving, for instance, from Lagos to Abeokuta, you will give a free ride on the street. Today, to give a free ride, and nobody wants to take a free ride. So mutual trust among the people has been destroyed. And where there's no mutual trust, where it's raining, you cannot just take refuge in your neighbor's house. When you find a society in that kind of situation, where communities no longer trust themselves, individuals no longer trust themselves, everybody looks at this all with suspicion. There's no way you can have growth based on communality and of solidarity of the people. So we have lost it almost every ground. Take our election, for instance. People take money in order to elect leaders, and those leaders know that the people don't ask about environmental issues. They don't talk about job creation. They don't talk about education. They don't talk about health. And politicians are no longer based on values. They just come and then beat drums, and they use the women as specimens. They dance, they beat drums, they throw money, and then that is campaign. They go back to their offices, to the campaign offices. At the end of the day, they ask people to come and vote. They give them 2,000 naira, 3,000 naira, and the people have accepted that one as a culture. They no longer ask their leaders to be accountable to them. It's as if what you think you expect from that politician, you have taken it on the day of voting. And then individual politicians are taking over the role of the state. It is House of Assembly that will now produce water for you. It's a member of the House of Assembly that will now give you scholarship. It's a member of the House of Assembly who now come and tie your road. Though individuals have assumed the status of emperors of the state. So the role of the state, the responsibility of the state has been diminished. Individuals are now the state on their own. And I think this has become a well-designed system that will perpetually keep Nigerians underdeveloped, that will keep Nigerians in a state of stupor, that will make it very difficult for the country to lift itself, to compete with other developed countries in the community of nations.
Thank you, Mr. I've been speaking to Mr. Adewale Adeoye, a journalist, a renowned journalist for that matter, a very good icon in the journalistic world in Nigeria. He's been explaining to us, mirroring, x-raying all the dooms that we have faced as a nation in the past 60 years and even prior. However, let me go back to the studio for a short advertisement. While we come back, then we continue with the interview. Thank you.
Thank you. Tell Ah.
You are welcome back. And the program is cutting edge. The program that actually mirrors the life of achievers on editing television. A program that actually tells you more about our icons, how they have traveled, how they have been able to achieve what they achieve in life, and how they can inspire the coming generations as well as the youth of today. Most especially as we find ourselves in a cornered arena now, where we are being punched continuously and we cannot resist. And as we are speaking, loss and loss of destruction is staring at us in the face, and God is the only one that is sustaining us. And so, through this interview, we have to be inspired. We need to actually be made to be more resilient and get, what has made those of the past to be very well achieving in their goals so that they can inspire us into a better future. I've been having my conversation today with Mr. Adewale Adeoye, an icon, a journalist of high repute, somebody who has actually seen the ups and downs of journalism in Nigeria. And he has explained to us, he has been mirroring to us the doom that has steered us as we actually fall headlong from grace to grass in Nigeria, a nation that in the early 60s boasted of highly placed educationists who traveled across the world, a nation that actually gets respect anywhere you go there, that even the white man will have to carry their luggages for them because they arrived in foreign lands. A nation now that littered across the world, every corner of the world, the youths, women, being made to go and live for prostitution in order to live. A nation that has boast of graduates now walking on the streets as M smokers with no hope for Nigeria. Mr. Adeoye has explained all this to us. And if I may ask, before I continue with the question, let me just introduce to you my co-presenter today. Her name is Mrs. Abimbola Oni. Bimbo, you're welcome.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me today. Thank you so much.
So, thank you as you're coming along. Now, Mr. Adeoye, how did we get to this level? How did we get here as a nation?
I think it's a very long history. But I would like to say that if you look at how things, took a gradual turn for the worse, it started after the collapse of the regional system. In 1939, Bodilon knew there were the then governor of Lagos State the colonial governor knew there were different ethnic groups in Nigeria. And when they were leaving, they suggested the idea of having a federal system of government, whereby each ethnic group, each region will be able to develop based on our values, based on our tradition, based on our heritage. So we had a federal system of government, and then we had the three regions created: the western region, the northern region, the eastern region. If you look at what Awolowo was able to achieve within a period of less than 10 years, if you compare what the Southwest has achieved since 1960 or since 1959 when Awolowo left, that's about almost 60 years. It cannot in any way get close to what Awolowo achieved. A period of those 60 years. What happened? The regions, and even when you go to the north, let us be very fair in this context. What Sardauna achieved, Ahmadu Bello University that was built, there has not been any equal in the whole of northern Nigeria for 60 years. University of Nigeria, Nsukka, there has not been any equal for 60 years. Look at the roads. Up to the early 80s, there were some roads. If you go to Ilaro, Ekiti, you see some roads built by Awolowo. Awolowo established where you could raise cow at a town, at a village called Okeako-Ekiti. And then they established one in Akungba. That Okeako-Ekiti, people they used to bring the copter to bring cow, very fat cows. And at that time, we never knew that we need to be importing cows. We had the textile industry in Ado-Ekiti. We had so many factories. In fact, Lagos was the hub. Ikeja, Ajegunle, part of what emotion. Leyland was at Ibadan. We had so many industries, almost everything we were producing by ourselves. And then talk of education. The content of education was not just about going to school, but the content. If you are growing up in primary school, they will teach you in those days what you used to call akosori. Yes, they say apá machete kokoroni. Shift your feet. Don't step on those little ants. That is environmental consciousness. Má gbójúlógún, tó bá gbójúlógún tẹ́tán ni mo sọ fún ẹ. Ìyá rẹ lè lówó lọ́wọ́, bàbá rẹ lè lẹ́sìn lẹ́kàn, tó bá gbójúlé wọn tẹ́tán ni mo sọ fún ẹ. They are telling you not to be dependent on your parents. Iṣẹ́ lè wò ṣẹ́. Múra síṣẹ́ ọ̀rẹ́ mi. Your hand is labor, is your future. So we read about Ìjàpá Iyánníbo, folk tales, that we ended up telling you that greed is a vice. Those folk tales that we taught our children in schools. They would, when you read those things, they will tell you that, look, this is what we now watch Tom and Jerry, Nickelodeon. Our children were growing up learning about culture and education. And that's why you look at the symbol of a great effect: culture, learning, and education. So the values that we grew up at that time, if you grow up with those kind of values, you will be a total being. Respect for others, hard work, don't rely on the inheritance of your parents. Values that will make you a total human being. Then suddenly, the military came. They removed those syllables from our schools. We used to read Ashatorisha, Fagunwa, which was our own Shakespeare. Alawiye, part 1, part 2, part 3. They removed those syllables from our school. And we are teaching our children in our local language, which was our spirituality, our heritage, our culture, our philosophy, our cosmogony, our spirituality, our relationship with man and God. So those things that are inherent, created by God, sustained over centuries, were taken away in the drive to create a national culture that has that is void, that has no content. So they changed the syllabus deliberately. And that's why when you ask a Yoruba person who is about in his 30s, he never had this shared history. He doesn't even know what Oduduwa is all about. I wrote a story for the Nation newspaper when I was deputy editor. I went to St. Saviour's in Ikene, attended by Shewa from Awolowo Primary School. I asked the children, did you know about Awolowo? Some of the children told me, a former minister. One said, a former Oba of Ikene, primary school children. Then I now asked them, between Awolowo and Obafemi Martins, who is your hero? The children shouted, Oba go! So you could imagine the kind of situation we find ourselves. I went to Ogoniland, the school attended by Ken Sarowa. I asked the students, the pupils, they were asking me, so one was saying the primary school, Ogoni was Ken Sarowa was a minister in Abacha's government. Abacha that killed Ken Sarowa. So when a people have no history, when there's no way such a people can have dignity in themselves, there's no way they can have trust in themselves. So we lost this when we took away a system of government that reflected our values, our culture. There was the Williston Commission of Equality set up in 1959, which went around the country. And the recommendation was that the best thing for Nigeria was to have a federal system, or a regional system of government at that time, not even federal. So that the Yoruba people could, at that time we had our own embassy at Ibadan. If I'm going abroad, I don't need to go to Abuja to go and collect visa. I just go to Ibadan. The man from Inewi does not need to go to Abuja. It just goes to Enugu. The man from Kaduna, he doesn't need to come to Abuja. He just goes to Kano, to Kaduna. The man from Kano will just come to Kaduna and collect his visa. We had the Western House, which was more or less like our embassy in London, which was later taken over by Nigeria. We had the Western Nigerian Television Authority, which has now been taken over by NTA. We had our own museum, which was taken over by the federal government. The artifacts that were used during the war that ended in 1886 were all kept in the Western Nigerian Museum. When they created the federal capital, moved it to Abuja, they took everything away. I met Okedengbe, the grandson, recently. Where are those things? They are kept in the National Theatre. The intellectual knowledge that Western Nigerian television had, the films, the clips, they move everything to NTA. Those things are worth over $50 billion. They are no longer properties of Western region. So this is the problem we have from Nigeria. We are building a garrison state. You know, we are distorting our heritage. We are distorting where we are coming from. We want to build castles in the air. And that is why it has been very difficult for this country to grow. You cannot create local government unless you get permission from Abuja. Sometimes you cannot become the governor of your state unless you have backing from Abuja. And what backing are they giving you? It's not, they are not giving you moral values. They are not telling you about the quality of your manifesto. They are telling you about how to give you 4 billion, 5 billion, 10 billion, go and win the election. In Ondo State, that was where the Biko Sebe, it came in the last election. You get 5,000 naira and then you go and vote. So this is the situation Nigeria finds itself, and getting out of this quagmire is a very difficult thing. And if you look at what is going on in the Southwest, which is the tradition of educated people, more and more people are losing interest in elections. Go and look at the number of registered voters in Lagos, number of registered voters in Ekiti State, in Ondo State. People are losing interest because of the level of education. They cannot imagine themselves going to queue for 2,000. So if you have a society where education is, the people are not educated, this kind of system favors them. Because people just want, they are not educated, they just go and vote. But educated people will think twice. What is the value voting for these riffraffs? So a society that is not educated, a society that is not places values on morality, a candidate that does not pay emphasis on education is likely to win an election in this kind of society that we have. And a society that people are less educated, we likely have more votes in this kind of society that we have. So, but a society that is educated with a rich history may likely have very few voters because they look at the same as rotten, and that there's no point for them going to queue for something that will be counterproductive at the end of the day. So it looks like a design to keep us in this kind of perpetual state. So even when you're talking about changing the system through your ballots, you have to look at what ballot are you talking about? Are people coming out to vote? Even if they vote, will their votes count? So it's a very difficult situation we find ourselves. If you go to villages now, parents in those days, when they see somebody bringing a car into the town, into the village, they will run away. The first question is, an educated man? What job does he do? But now, if you go to the village with a Prado, the next thing the king comes to you and say, we want to give you a chieftaincy title. So a society that is not driven by values, that is not driven by ideas, can never grow, can never make progress. If we take, for instance, Israel, the United States, Britain, these are societies propelled by ideas, propelled by education, propelled by intellectual right, intellectual strength. So a society that is not driven by intellectualism, that is not driven by ideas, not driven by values, can never make progress. We'll just be parabolating, and we'll continue to be a consumer society, importing things from abroad. We'll not be able to produce anything, and our youths are gradually catching this ball. Go and ask them who are their heroes. If you put it on a website that people should vote for Soyinka or someone else, maybe you say, a street whatever, and you are TW chairman, that person may likely win. So I think our challenge is cultural genocide. One of the major challenges is not just about development of infrastructure and superstructure. It's also about cultural genocide that has been perpetrated against our people. A situation where you don't ask your children if they go to school and they come with marks on their body as cops. You don't ask questions. You see your children, they want to go to secondary school and primary schools now. Children contesting to be what they call the president of the. In primary school, they do election now. They go to those primary schools and secondary schools with money. They buy goodies, share among their classmates, and the teachers will support them in order to emerge as the presidents, the captains of those secondary schools. Primary schools are now doing graduation. People will hire vehicles, all sorts of things because somebody wants to graduate from primary school. And whereas in those days, if you don't read up to B, you say this man they has read up to B. Okay, with the B, you have no value in your society. Where there's no more value for education. It's now when people want to they want to sack their trousers. Those are the heroes on our streets. People, even when you are talking about musicians in those days, they reflected the moral values of the society by the kind of music that is shown out. Aruna Ishola, Alamu, Ebenezer Obey, Sonny Ade. You see that they might sing in the popular, do whatever. But when they want to produce their album, it's about the heritage of the people. It's about music. It's about philosophy. So you could say that the musicians of today reflect the rot in our society. So when we are talking about changing our society, we must also talk about tackling the cultural genocide that has been the lot of our people. And it has to be through education. We have to go back to primary schools. The kind of books our people read, the kind of things they watch on TV, those are the things that will define their heroes.
Mr. Adeoye, honestly, you've really had me gobsmacked. I appreciate the narratives. I appreciate all the experience you have exhibited. I appreciate every aspect of your response today because you are a real teacher of culture, education, moral, and everything you can think of. And I'm so proud of you. God bless you, rising more. You seem
Thank
to
you.
be running beyond me because I can see lots and lots of areas that you have touched. And honestly, as narration was going on, I'm almost in tears because I reflected my mind going back to history about how we were, as you rightly said, and then you keep wondering how did we get here? And right now, as you have actually gone beyond me, let me deviate a bit from my next question, which actually was about how journalism could be improved in Nigeria. But we'll be talking about that later. Right now, because of the fire that's going on in you, let me ask you. You explained the extent that the Western Nigeria went, even in having its own embassy in the United Kingdom, in having so many things that could be referred to as iconic in the entire world. And this is a region now that has gone back 60 years as a sort of a shadow of itself. Now, going through all this problem in southern Nigeria, southwest Nigeria, what will you adduce the fault to as we are speaking today? Because we parade the most elitist people in southwestern Nigeria. We happen to be leading in every aspect of life, in politics, in commerce, in music, in every aspect of education. But this is year 2020, and you can see South Nigeria now walloping in hopelessness, in uncertainties, even in security wise now, we are on the verge of extermination. As things are going on now, we just pray that before the end of this year, we don't have ethnic cleansing. Now, who are the real causes of this problem? I'm talking right now. Let's forget about those who have been used to destroy the culture, as you have rightly said. Those who have arrested our moral, who have arrested every aspect of our life. They're coming home now. We have elites among us. We have educationists. We have those people who have actually been the real engine that is working in Nigeria. Now, can I ask you, who are those that should be responsible for the retardation of the progress of Southwest Nigeria?
Well, I think there are three layers of people responsible for our dilemma. The first one is external. The second one is internal. The third one is global. The global one, the global capital, the Western world, they don't want any country to develop. They want you to be a country that produces raw materials. They want to manipulate your political process. They want to manipulate your population. They want to manipulate your reasoning process. Nations that have developed, like Japan, like China, like Singapore. When Singapore left Malaysia in 1965, nobody gave Singapore any chance of growing. What they did, they delinked from these international collaborators and look inward to develop their potentials. Russia did the same thing in its own revolution. So no country ever wants you to overtake them. They want to keep you in perpetual, to use as a footstool. So that international collaborators are always there. You see what is going on in the Middle East now. The collaborators after oil. Because if we are able to produce our Ford cars, our Toyota cars, how are you going to be importing from Japan? They will not make their money any longer. And these same countries, they are the recipients of stolen goods, stolen properties. When our politicians steal money, they take them to Europe. They keep this money. They pretend as if it is nothing. Until when you now see years after, they're now talking about stolen properties. But their banks are collaborators who collect this money and keep in their banks. Then the external one, that is the federal government of Nigeria. In 1964, a state of emergency was imposed on Western region for no reason. We had the action group that won the election. We had the deputy that was not comfortable with the policies, the democratic socialism of the action group. And then if there had not been collaboration between the federal government and the local people at home, if it had been on our own, there was no way Awolowo would have been sent to prison. There was no way that the mighty things that he did would have been thwarted. Then there was a military coup, counter coup, and then they thwarted the big building, the monument that were built for about 8 years. They destroyed everything. University of Ife was taken over in 1976. It was owned by Western Nigeria. They took it over in 1970s. What have they done with it? So the external power, and that is why most crises we have in Western, the June 12th election was annulled by the same federal might. They will come and tell you one social collaborator, the social Yoruba man, is all lies. They will always get people to support them, but they are the main actors, always looking for collaborators. When Jews were being persecuted in the army, there are a few Jews that supported Hitler. Does that mean that all the Jews were irresponsible or their collaborators? No. We remember, even our old Lord Jesus Christ had 12 disciples. He had a betrayed total among them. So the issue is not about whether Yoruba people are the one that are not June 12. It was an agenda of Babangida and the military class and some people in the north who didn't want Abiola to be the president. So we have those external aggressors. Then the internal collaborators. Those are the people, the satellite people who work with them. When they are bringing money, they take. Go and eliminate this person. They go and eliminate him. Go and make sure that that state, there is no agenda. Any governor can win. They go there and implement the agenda of those people. You are coming with rail line from Lagos to Ibadan. The Southwest states wants to collaborate. They will tell you, this state governor, don't be part of them. They thwart it. Then you want Amotekun to be established. Then they go and meet one of the state governors. Don't be part of them. So we have these internal collaborators. So we have three layers of threats: the international threat, the national threat, and then the internal threat. So, but basically, I think our major problem is leadership in Yoruba land. Because if you don't bend your back, nobody can ride you. We have seen smaller nations that emerge as victorious in their determined campaign to be free. Look at South Africa, with all the monuments of apartheid, with all the new machines that are being invented to kill the black people. Because of the determination of people like Mandela, or people like Steve Biko, or people like Thabo Mbeki, at the end of the day, they won that battle. Let us take a very small country like East Timor. that fought mighty Indonesia. Indonesia is about 200 million people. East Timor, a very small country. I met one of their leaders in a trip to Moscow some years back. I asked him, how did you manage to win this battle? He said, determination. Determination. Small country of 3 million people, they were able to get self-determination for them in spite of how mighty Indonesia is. Look at Eritrea. Eritrea was fighting Ethiopia with the support of Soviet Union. Ethiopia is about 81 million. Eritrea, just about 4 million people. They didn't give up for about 30 years. Their women were in the trenches. Eventually, they won this battle. So when you don't have a leader that is consistent, a leader that is driven by ideas, a leader that is determined to lead his people, just like Awolowo was. Awolowo would have given up when he was asked to go to prison, but he never gave up. They would have killed him in prison. He never gave up. He was determined. He didn't betray his people. He stood on the ground of honesty and truth, and eventually he died in his sleep, while most of his detractors died either being shot on the street or being killed, in an unusual manner. Awolowo lived up to a ripe age. So truth pays. If we have a leader that is honest, that is determined, our problem will not be like this. So we are in search of a leader. Yoruba land is in search of a leader. Nigeria itself is in search of a leader. Because when you have a good leader, you will understand the problems and say, look, let us go back to where we are coming. Let us sit down and talk about the future of the country. We have had series of constitutional conferences since 1922. Clifford Constitution, Racial Constitution. Then they even implemented their resolutions. We have to be fair to the British. When they were leaving, they left the regions. We came and modeled it up. That you can build a house from the rooftop. How can you build a house from the rooftop? So today now everything is centralized. The police, security, the economy, culture, values, communication. You even want to get a license for TV. If Abuja doesn't give you that, you cannot get it. Community radio, the same thing. So our major problem in the Southwest is leadership. If I have a good leader that is determined and bold, I think that 80 million people, or let's even say we are 50 million, with a rich history, will never be subjugated. And if Yoruba people see a good leader, they will follow him. Yoruba people, we are like hen. When hen is leading his children, the children will be in the front. The mother will be following them. It is what the leaders, the leader must do what the followers want. But we have been having leaders that they are not committed to what Yoruba people want. Everybody knows. Go and talk to the market woman on the street. Tells you, look, he wants to have some level of to express his culture, express his values, express his heritage. Our leaders know what our people want, but they are afraid to live up to our expectations.
Mr. Adeoye, you are feeling dazzled me because you are just full of history. And I think you agree with me that our problem actually in Yoruba land has got nothing to do with leadership. But those who are predating against us, as I may put across to you, seems to be in connivance with outside world who have seen the prospect of that greatness that in the southwest of Nigeria. Will you agree with me that even though what's happening right now is a conspiracy, both internal and external, against Yoruba land and against the southwest of Nigeria, knowing fully what this region of Nigeria achieved in the late 50s to early 60s? Don't you think there is a conspiracy here to draw back the progress of Yoruba land or the southwest Nigeria so that it will not be living the destiny that God has made it to be the shining land for the entire black race across the world? Don't you reckon that the major conspiracy is international against Yoruba land?
Well, if we have no history, I would have said there is no need for anybody to conspire against us. But when you look at our history, from 10th century, we had the monarchy system of government. Our palace is older than Buckingham Palace. The Akure Palace was built in the 11th century with underground tunnel. We had a system of government under Alaafin of Oyo. They call it Oyomesi, which today is called the Senate. If you look at the quality of debate When William Clark visited Yoruba land, he was amazed by the quality of debate in Oyomesi. The Oyomesi served as check and balance for the king. And also, if you look at the achievements in terms of military might, we had a civil war that lasted 16 years. It started in 1886. Only strong countries go to war if you are not buoyant economically, and there was no famine. There was no issue of children killed. In fact, they used to observe ceasefire. There will be a period, Ekiti and Ibadan, they will not fight. The generals will go to the market, they will greet each other. Those are the things that the UN later adopted as conventions, war conventions. In our history, we never killed pregnant women. We never killed children. Women could be taken maybe during the war, but they never massacre them like we have today. Even generals, you cannot kill a general at that time. You have to arrest the general and then bring him to the court.
Which applies today internationally.
Yes. Ogedengbe had and Latosha, they are one of the most brilliant military fortress you can ever think about. And during their training, they used to adopt this. They will go to the bush and study animals. They look at snakes. They look at birds. If enemies are far away in the distance, once you see a bevy of birds, moving from one tree to the other, it shows the enemies are very close. When the birds fly up in a spiral way, the enemies are far away. When you see a buffalo coming and its head is down, it means the enemies are very close. When the heads are up, it means the enemies are far away. This is science. They study those animals and they develop a military strategy. And when they heard about the military strategy, they were marveled. To the extent that the King of England sent for Ogedengbe to pay a state visit. Ogedengbe said he was not interested. I met with the current Ogedengbe today. I went to his palace. He showed me the picture that was sent by the King of England to him. Because Ogedengbe said he could not go for a state visit. Then you look at the way we organize our system. The kind of the moral values that we had in those days. The economy. Efusheta Niwura had about 2,000 people working on our farm at Ibadan. People only look at the negative aspect, but that woman was an industrialist. Then you look at even in modern day, as far back as 1880, Nathaniel Thomas of Yoruba extraction was the first medical doctor. The first African lawyer, Sapara Williams, was from this our territory. So we started using Yoruba language as a means of communication as far back as 1800s. It started in a girls' school in Sierra Leone. So when you combine all these things with what we have, what we have done in those, do you know that Ogedengbe used to import weapons? I saw those weapons from West, I think from Hamburg in Germany. I saw one or two. I said, where are the rest? The federal government packed them to National Museum, now in Abuja. So when you look at where we are coming from, our values, our heritage, our history, at a time, if not because of the division that was in Yoruba land, we will have had soldiers, about 500,000 military men. So it will be very difficult for the British to take over Yoruba land. So when you look at this kind of system, there is cause for worry. And then when Awolowo came, the kind of standard, the kind of education, the housing program at Bodija, the free and compulsory education that the colonial master says was not possible, but he did it within a period of 8 years. You talk about the GRA here. The GRA built by Awolowo, the ones they are building now, they can't compare with them. So there is that kind of feelings that we have the light of the black world that some people are working hard to dismantle. It's now our responsibility to say that no, and we can do it. Other countries have done it before. Other people have done it before. Our own should not be different. Because I believe the creator of heaven and earth is on our side. And we stand on the rock of truth against the flood of ungodly men, or people that live in heathen. And we believe that if we are consistent and we are united, no force on earth can stop us. The will of man, no military arsenal all over the world can stop the will of man. All the things we are looking at these days, television stations, the way we are communicating now, are products of people's ideas. No military hardware could stop the determination of man. So I believe if we are determined and we are united, no force on earth can stop us from regaining our heritage and rebuilding our nation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adeoye. If I may read you right, you are trying to send across to the world that the time has now come for the Yoruba nation to emerge from the doldrums of the blackmail of those who don't want us to be anything in the world. Is that what, am I reading you right? That you support the Yoruba nation? Imagine?
Well, Yoruba nation has always been there.
I know,
for the past centuries.
From the current contraption called Nigeria. Okay.
What happened is that Yoruba nation has been balkanized. Okay.
I know. Now, let me now ask this question. Those who actually bastardize or balkanize us know us better than we know ourselves. That is, the tactics they are using is dividing us so that they can conquer us. And that has worked for them since 1960. And all they will do is create a power base among those that are weak within the Yoruba nation. Those I always refer to during program as Omo Elebis and Omo Alebis. That is the bastard. I mean, I refer to them as being bastards and those hungry lions who are desperate to sell their inheritance for a pot of porridge, as I always refer to them. So now, this is the tactic that has been used to rule us, to override us, to overrun us since 1960. How do we identify these people and how do we dislodge ourselves from this contaminating virus that has eaten deep into us as Yoruba people? Because right now, there's nothing we can do if they condescend into those who are bribing them in order to destroy Nigeria, to destroy the Yoruba nation. Because by the time they go behind to bribe them, not all of us are going to be there. Today they say they support Yoruba nation, by tomorrow, because they've been bribed, they now retract their claim, and then these people are using them just to pretend as if there is a federal character in the governance. Whereas what they are doing is dividing us to rule us. How do we get out of this virus of destruction that has eaten deep to Yoruba land? Those that are selling us for a pot of porridge, those who are being bribed by the federal might so that they can stop on us and destroy us as a nation. How do we move out of this logjam? How do we get out of that virus? What can we do to get out? Because right now we are going to move on into Yoruba nation from now. But how do we dislodge these people? How do we identify them and shame them so that they can live Yoruba nation in peace?
I will not delude myself that it's a very simple solution. There is no simple solution to the cobweb of difficulties we find ourselves as a people today. But one thing is certain. If we recognize the fact that we have a history, which I think we all recognize, either poor or rich, or whether you are part of the oppressors or not. And then if we also agree that the present system is not favorable, that is why we may not agree, because the beneficiaries, there are some people who think that this system is the best for them. But majority of Yoruba people, I think, believe there is a need to have an alternative experience. So I believe that all what we need is a movement that is honest, that is driven by ideas, that is not violent, that can educate our people about where they are coming from. People always act contemptuously about the need to create consciousness. They assume that every Yoruba knows, so we should just organize them. A lot of people are ignorant. When Afenifere started, they had a school at Ibadan, where they will send people they will send their members to for education. They will be there for months. We need to start an education process. Look at what Christians and Muslims do. They take the Quran, they use it to educate their people. They take the Bible, they educate their people. We need that system that will document our history, the pamphlets, and then go from one place to the other to educate our people, to conscientize them. We did that under the military when we had campaign for democracy. We produce millions of pamphlets. We take it out, distribute it to our people. They will read. Our people like to read. But these days, organizations don't do that. What they just do is to issue press statements. Hey, press statement, Yoruba people are not happy about this. How many people will read that press statement? There is no engagement with the people, constructive engagement with organized social formations in Yoruba land. Yoruba people are some of the most organized people. You see tailors, they have association. You see barbers, they have association. You see farmers, they have association. Hairdressers. Is there any link between these organizations and our so-called leaders? Virtually none. Has there been any time we want to address mechanics, NATA, Nigerian Automobile Technician Association, Okada riders? There is a Yoruba association that brings down, they bring together Okada. The Agbekoya, that was what Awolowo used to do. If it's a meeting, if we go and meet farmers association, we address them. If we meet artisans association, we address them. If we go to the remotest rural areas, Awolowo was in a town, in a place called Ayede, in a local government. He spent 3 days. The people will come, he will educate them. From there, we move from one village to the. How many do our leaders, do they travel around? Do they go to villages? A former governor recently granted an interview, and he was saying that Ilaje, that non-Yoruba people now mention Ilaje. He never knew, a former governor, that Ilaje are Yoruba people. I had to call the president of Ilaje Association, look at what this man has said in the national newspaper for him to respond. So they don't know that Shekiri are part of Yoruba history. They don't know that a war of people are in Lokoja, that Lokoja means Ilokojo, that a war of people are Yoruba people. They don't know. They don't know that Ogorip and Yoruba people are of common ancestry. Even when they are talking about Yoruba, they just limit it to the 6 southwestern states. They don't know that in Kwara, 12 local governments are basically Yoruba local government. In Kogi, Kabaf, there is Ife, Olukotun, which is, fashioned after the same our own Ife here. So they don't know about all these things, and they don't seem to care. That's the leadership. So when you are talking about the kind of thing we need now, is an organization that will be able to reach out to organized structures in Yoruba land. Once these organizations are linked up, they'll be able to link up with their members, and you'll be able to have a movement that will come together and assert itself and say, this is what our people want.
Mr. Adeoye, well done. You've really knocked the nail on the head that we have to start the process of reorganizing ourselves in groups, as professionals, as idealists, that is quite a very good way of approaching it, which I hope our people are listening and they will do the rightful. Now, let me come to our latest history as a country, as Nigeria. In 2014, the indices showed that Nigeria was actually recapturing its destiny as a nation. Because if you go back and Google it, it's there. That as at December 2014, Nigeria was number 5 in the world investment destination. And that is in the entire world. And in Africa, is number 1 investment destination. So anybody who wants to invest from across the world, that Nigeria, this is the position that is holding. And now, that was the position that Nigeria was then, not an assessment by Nigerians or by West Africa or by Africa, but by international community, who saw what Jonathan did up to that level and put that report across to the world, that these are the prospect of, if you want to make profit, if you want to really have security in your business and everything, Nigeria is the place to be, is the best place to be, number 5 in the world and number 1 in Africa. And so that scenario was happening, and many of our elites were those who campaigned for Buhari and bastardized that government. And that government today cannot boast of anything except completing the project that Jonathan started, and now claiming that they are the owner of the project, whereas many of these projects actually have been paid for, and many of them are being traded by barter, that is oil for infrastructural development, which actually happened. Now, our elites in Yoruba land, we are talking about those that actually sold Yoruba land to the Fulanis in 2015. How come this was able to happen? Are we now saying that in Yoruba land we have no spiritual guide anymore before they went into that marriage of aligning with all these people that are now enemies to us as a nation in Yoruba land? Are we saying that they haven't got that spirit of the spirit of the sun, that what they were going to was a lion's den, where if they go, they will not be able to return? How come our elites were a party to the destruction of the future of Yoruba nation as it is happening now? And we are having lots and lots of these mercenaries now that are spread across Yoruba land. Unless God intervenes, ethnic cleansing is staring at us in the face. How come this was able to happen when we have elites, educationists, intellectuals who should be able to understand, and our spiritual God that has never let us down as a people? Are we now saying that we live our life in hollow without spiritual consult? Are we now saying that our Muslim brothers, our Christian brothers are out of their minds spiritually and they cannot deduce and project for the future? Why would the Yoruba nation be what it is today? Please enlighten me. And those who have sold us are these elites. Because we saw the statement they made prior to Buhari coming to be the president. Many of them throwing their weight behind him, that is the Messiah that the Nigerian will have, despite the fact that even though everything has now acted to the contrary. Please, how do we address our elites who have been so who have been guiding us as a people? Please, and explain to us.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I think 2015 was just one of the landmarks. We have had several landmarks beginning from 1999. I think we got it wrong in 1999 because of the kind of constitution that we had. If we had had a more liberal and inclusive constitution that, people made input, and if we had insisted on true federalism since 1999, we would not even have been interested in who became the president in 2015. We would not have been interested, because who cares about people in California? Do they care about who becomes the president of Nigeria, of US? They care more about their state. So I think what made us two things happened. We went to that election in 2015. Why is it that it is that presidency that now influences the 36 states? Because the president is too powerful. So I want to be a little bit historical, because if we got it right in 1999, probably President Buhari would not even be interested in that election. We will be talking about who will be the premier of Western region, and I think it would have been easier, because as of 1999, the most dominant political trend were the progressives in Southwest, represented by the Alliance for Democracy. So we lost it in 2007 when the AD was swept all over the Southwest, because we cannot talk about Lagos without talking about Ibadan. So there is a cause and then the effect. The 2015 election was an effect. Then for the 8 years that we had our own son there, we also need to look at what achievements do we have for those 8 years that are fundamental, something you can point to. It was under that regime we lost the deputy leader of Yoruba land, Bola Ige. We don't know who killed him up to today. That government did not tell us, and up till now we don't know. Odif was raided. Odioma was attacked. I was in that village. I saw corpses on it, on everywhere. So we need to look at where we are coming from. And then we had 8 years. People were clamoring for restructuring. Nothing happened. They said we should have a third term. After third term, things will change. We didn't give that third term because the constitution didn't allow it. And now we had Jonathan for 6 years, thereabout. It was the best.
Circumstantially.
Circumstantially, yes. Yes. And 8 years. And this is the error that our leaders usually commit. They think that they can rebuild a building by changing the curtains, by changing the windows, without rebuilding the foundation. So when President Jonathan came, you don't need 2 years to do the normal things. It may be tough, but if you really want to restructure Nigeria, you don't need 6 years to do it. We are now regretting that no restructure, but if he had done it for those 6 years, probably the person we are talking about now may not even come in 2015. For me, I think
let me just intercede there. That reminds me of the fact that even though Jonathan was there, but what about the powers underneath? Those that are actually the engine, those are actually running as the engine of that regime. Because we might be looking at Jonathan as the president, but there are forces behind that were, let me put you through what really happened prior to his coming. You remember when Yoruba was in Saudi Arabia, bedridden and in hospital, you remember that for almost 7 months, Nigeria was leaderless because the same forces that we're talking about that has held us captives for such a very long time are saying that they would never want them and want him to act as president. So it goes to show that the next level of that action was what happened during the election of 2015, when even the opposition party was threatening that if we had won that election genuinely or through rigging, that they were going to create a sort of parallel government outside of Nigeria, which could have been a recipe for war. That is, maybe certain aspect of international world are supporting them as against other part of. So that could have been a recipe for war during that period of time. So, won't you agree with me that the same forces that are the real enemy of Yoruba land and of Nigeria are those that actually did not allow the restructuring issue to take place? And I may ask you as well, why is it that the 2014 conference report up to today is being swept under the carpet? Which goes to show the power that is actually operating is beyond what we are narrating now. Whether we have a political force that is positive in the Southwest, whatever these powerful people are going to do is what they are going to do, which goes to show that Nigeria is not existing. It's a fake contraption. What's your comment about this?
Well, I agree with you that President Jonathan has some challenges, maybe the first 2 years. But he was sworn in as the president and commander-in-chief of the armed forces. The chief of army staff was a Southerner. The Senate president was from the Middle Belt. His national security advisor at the time was from Ondo State. And many other key important strategic positions. The director of State Security Service was also, and of course, the Minister of Petroleum. So what I felt happened was the lack of political will on the part of President Jonathan. Because those threats that they threaten him, those threats have always been there. They have always been there. Even when Buhari won, people were threatening. Niger Delta will blow this, will blow that. But if you are determined, you will not allow yourself to be moved. So I think if you look at so many countries surrounded by enemies, or they stand their feet. So I think he was weak, and then he could also not. He also did not apply the best strategy. But we should also realize that there were limitations. So I agree with you. And those limitations were not just imposed on the president, but also on we, Yoruba people or Nigerians. There were only 2 political parties, PDP, APC, the most formidable. The other political parties were more or less tied to them. So if you want to register a political party in Nigeria, unlike the 50s, you must have branches in all the local governments in Nigeria. They don't allow regional parties to operate. Whereas in the past, we had Ibadan People's Party, Action Group. You can just establish a party for your region.
But Mr. Adeoye, realistically, let me cut you short. Sorry about that. Realistically, will you refer to the PDP that contested the election against APC as real PDP. Because if you remember, more than 80% of those who were in PDP were those that moved to APC, like the
Yes.
new wine in old, old wine in new wine skin, sort of thing.
Yes.
And
Yes.
if
Yes.
Jonathan had taken the courage to change that name from PDP, that would have actually saved him from the current blackmail that people are putting across that PDP ran Nigeria for 60 years and they didn't give anything. We are the same set of people that ran PDP, that ran Nigeria Grant, are those that moved to APC. So why would a situation be whereby they try to be deceiving us and pretending as if everything is okay? How will you refer to that sort of abracadabra being met into us as a people, and 200 million people being so stupidly treated? Please comment on this.
That is why what we are seeing is manipulation of the political process by entrenched forces. You either vote for PDP or APC. Whereas, look at what is happening in Edo State, for instance. The current APC candidate was the PDP candidate last election. The current PDP candidate was APC's. So you could see that the two parties were being railroaded, mainstream into accepting the two political parties as the only option for Nigeria. And Nigerians, when they want to come and vote, when they want to go and vote, they know that it's just about two. It's only in very few instances that you see people assert themselves, like Abga and all that. So I think in order to change the narrative, Nigerians must begin to think beyond political parties. Because if the political parties offer the same thing to you, then you need to look for people to unite across political parties to come out with a common agenda and present to whichever party that is in government. So we need to begin to think beyond the political parties. Let us unite as a people and say, look, this is what we want. Whether you are PDP, whether you are APC, this is our agenda. It is easy to blame some people and say, okay, they signed an agreement with APC and then but the fact of the matter was that on our own free will, we came out to vote. We came out to vote to say, okay, this is the person that we wanted. Either they gave money, the two parties, of course, employ the same strategy. So why did we as a people, in our villages, in our towns, in our cities, why did we choose a particular political party? Because their options are limited. The options are imposed on us and we are railroaded into picking between the two political parties. So until we make up our mind to say, look, we want to delink and have maybe a regional party like Abga. Say, okay, this is our own party, this is our agenda. It's either you accept this or we don't vote for us. So apart from leadership, our people, our own people, we must also search our conscience. Do we really vote according to our conscience, or we vote according to what we are going to eat today? So it's easy to blame the leaders, right? Good. But then we must search our own conscience. So we need people a movement that can galvanize us, that can stir our conscience, so that we can vote according to our conscience and not according to the money that we are giving. As long as we continue to vote according to the details of Naira, we are never going to get the best in Nigeria. But I think in 2015, most people in the Southwest here felt, okay, let us vote for APC. Maybe they were going to give us restructuring. More so that restructuring was also included in the manifesto. I'm always sure, in APC manifesto, it is there. I'm almost sure that those leaders today, in their bedroom, many of them will be regretting. 4 years after, nothing about restructuring. In fact, we are getting more centralized, far away from what we thought would be the game. So it's never too late for us to assert ourselves and say, look, this is what we want. And another election is coming again. But even before that election, we should not tie our future to elections. We must start today and let the whole world know that this is what we want. We are tired of, just voting over and over again without the fundamental problems being addressed.
Before we go on a short break, let me ask this. Has Nigeria expired as a nation?
Well, legally, 2019, that the country was amalgamated.
1914.
1914, on January 1st, 1914. Who are the people that were consulted? Who are the people that signed the treaty? So the country just came as an assumption. It was not based out of constructive negotiation, out of robust debate, out of free, prior, and informed consent of the members of that union. That is the truth. Nothing but the truth. So Nigerians at any time they have not come together to say, okay, this is our own dream of it. All the laws that have been made since 1914, the laws, constitution, they were made by few individuals. The Constitution of South Africa received 1 million memorandum from different individuals and organizations, and they treated each of them, some written in local languages. And when they wanted to do that constitution in 1994, they translated it to 11 languages so that no excuse, you will be able to read it. 1999 constitution. Some few individuals, they just wrote it, and then they post it on us. And the constitution is the ground norm. It is the rule. Unless we have a constitution that emerge out of our own free will, it's a joke. Nigeria will continue to be a joke. The country will continue to expire. We may be saying Nigeria, but deep down in the mind of everyone, how many people can really live and die for Nigerians? How many soldiers can even wish to die for the country? Or any policeman, not talk of civilians. So, right in our mind, people don't have a sense of belonging. And that's why we do a lot of things with impunity. They can give you public fund, you steal it. Nigerian money, you destroy it. Government vehicle, you destroy it. Because there is no belief. There is no acceptance of the fact that we share common dreams and common aspirations as a people.
Thank you very much. Considering this fact that you have narrated now, don't you think it is legal for anybody to agitate for its own autonomy in all the sides of the nation? Because we still have some Northerners now saying that they want to get out of Nigeria. We actually saw in recent months the extent to which the Yorubas are saying that they want their own autonomy. And we know the agitation of the IPOB for a very long time. Don't you think the time is now right for every region of Nigeria to determine their own future and hold their own destiny in their own hands?
I think there are two set of groups fighting for autonomy. The first one, in the category of Pan-Yoruba groups, there are actually about 25 of them. The first one was established in December 1994, in recent times, Oodua Youth Movement. After that, OPC. After that, Oodua Liberation Movement. After that, Federation for Yoruba Youth and Consciousness. After that, Oodua Republic Front. After that, Yorem, Yoruba Revolutionary Movement, 25 of them. Then now we have the Yoruba World Congress. Afenifere has been there since 1948. And it's all about some level of autonomy for our people. So there are two groups of people agitating for autonomy. The first one is the group I've mentioned, in a very peaceful way. We also have another group advocating for autonomy in a violent manner. And since 2019, they have been carried out bombings. Boko Haram is talking about Sharia. That's some level of autonomy. That's some level of self-determination. Instead of them to do it in a peaceful way, they are using suicide bombers. They are using people to kill soldiers. That is a very wrong method. So for me, if people are advocating for self-determination in a very peaceful way, we have to pick between the two options. Do we want the Boko Haram version, or we want the peaceful version represented by Oodua Liberation Movement, Oodua People's Congress? Because they are not talking about arms, they are talking about peaceful ways. So it's either we take violent, fundamentalist ways, suicide bombing, or we take peaceful agitation. So I think the peaceful agitation is recognized by international laws. Either our Nigerian law recognizes it or not. The African Charter, the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, made on December 10, 1948, recognizes the right to self-determination. So it's not a debatable thing. People have the right to say, okay, this is what we want. What we are saying is that the agitation must be within the confines of international laws. You can make law today, a decree, and say, hey, if you want to do self-determination, we are going to kill you. you are deceiving yourself, because international law is supreme to your own local tyrannical laws. And we are members of the United Nations, so we cannot not run away from it. So international law recognizes the right to self-determination, universal laws. So it's not a question of whether Nigeria wants it or not. The important issue now is, how does the Nigerian government want to address this issue? Do you want to dismiss them as rabble-rousers, as jobless people, or want to listen to them? So if you have a house of 10 children, and some of the children are saying they want to go and get their own apartment, you want to stay alone because the father is a drunk, the father is a spendthrift, he's a womanizer, and there's ways I want to leave this say, Papa, I want to go and you say it's an insult. Don't raise that issue. Hey, you are stupid. Don't talk about it. We must stay here together. That child will resort to violence. After some time, you'll be the one that will be begging him. This child say, I don't want to live under you. I want to go and rent my apartment. Say, he's even say, okay, I don't even want to go. Let us even talk. If you talk, you are irresponsible. Don't talk about it. I can't even. It's not negotiable. And then the money comes every year. You used to go and marry new women. You go and drink. You come back drunk in a state of stupor. You urinate everywhere. And this children say, let's go and get our own apartment. Don't. If you talk about it, you are a terrorist. So we need to understand the dynamics of international of global history, and we must be civilized. We must respect global laws. And say people are qualified, whether I'm a minister today or whatever, say the truth. Nobody should oppose the right to self-determination. It's backed by international law.
Of course. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I mean, nice meeting you once again. I would just like to ask a question very quickly before we end the program for today. And the question is, do you regret being a journalist in Nigeria?
I've suffered a lot of persecution that will make me to even give up. I entered a bus from here to Ivory Coast. We were almost killed on the road. Myself, Baba Mojola, Taiwo Titolahi, and some other. We were almost shot. I was detained by the Director of Military Intelligence. When I got there, I saw people tied with their heads down, and they put fire under them. People like Fire Miwo, who is in the US now. And I was asked to go and look for Bumi Aborishade, because I wrote a story about him that if I don't get him, they will kill him. When I got back from the DMI, Bumi Aborishade was in my house. I could have reported him and say, hey, so that I could be free, but I never did. So one has suffered a lot of persecution that could even say, I want to relocate. I even regret being a journalist. But I think the essence of life is to be able to make sacrifices for the comfort of others. So for me, I don't have any regret being a journalist.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. On this note,
thank you.
I just thank you so much. I mean, you're fantastic. You have knowledge of everything in regards to Nigeria, and I've learned a lot today. And I just hope that we'll get to do this very soon. And of course, we want our to be better. That's one of the reasons we're having this conversation. And I just hope that by the time we come back, things would have at least moved into a positive aspect from where we are from today. By God's grace, let's just continue praying for Nigeria. We can never give up on Nigeria. This is not the time to give up. This is the time to come together, like you rightly earlier. And thank you so much for coming. Thank you. It's an honor to be here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for our host.
Thank you for the great job you are doing. I thank you so much. You are wonderful people. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, sir.
Now, Mr. Adeoye, we will have to touch on this before we finally draw the curtain. You know what has been happening in the southwest of Nigeria in the past months? That is the importation of mercenaries into all the nooks and corners of southwest. Can you perceive any danger coming to southwest within a few months, within weeks or days? Can you see any sign that needs to be addressed as urgently as possible by the stakeholders in the southwest? As we're talking now, all the bushes are dotted with lots of mercenaries holding guns and they're pretending to be Okada riders. So, and with this danger now staring at us in the face, I don't know if we can actually address this today because it's a major, that was actually the area that
Mm,
I was about to go
mm,
into
mm.
before my colleague came on. Maybe we will
I
find
think we
time
might have to
to.
leave that question till next time and round up the program because of the time
Exactly. So
constraint.
I don't know how soon you can be available so that we can actually get this along and address it because we wouldn't want to rush into it because we have to strategically talk about it and plan
Yeah.
about it. And I really appreciate your presence today. And
Thank
let
you very
us see
much.
that we really enjoy you. And you have always been there, and we know you are a real educator. You've been really
Thank you.
educating our people. And history today has repeated itself by the way of allowing people to understand their past, their present, and what the future might be holding for them. Thank you very much, and may God
Thank
continue
you
to
very much.
bless your rising.
Thank you.
Soon
And
and
you
very
too.
soon,
Thank you very
and in
much.
fact, we would like to be seeing you on monthly basis
I
because you are
appreciate.
so loaded.
Thank you very much.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. I'm so sorry. I'm off.